All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another weekly live stream here. Hopefully you guys are all having a good weekend, had a good week. And so yeah, we'll just wait for a few people to trickle in here, but I see we already have a few people that are joining. So thanks to Arctic Turn, CK, Married with Crypto, Trucking Car Guy, David Fiegel. Thanks so much guys for all coming in here and hanging out for another Sunday. And so like all the other live streams here, I'll do the usual spiel. We'll go for about 2 hours. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or is a member of the channel and has those green usernames there with the badges. And but yeah, so otherwise, yeah, I see we have Married with Crypto says, "Hey Matt, glad you're here, and we've all made it in good health." Likewise, always great to see everyone in here. And let me see. Jazz says, Matt, did you like the radio program Car Talk on NPR with Click and Clack, the Tapper Brothers? I don't think I even know of that show, but I guess my Car Talk in the title is, I guess, riffing off that a little bit. Hopefully, I didn't realize there was something called Car Talk on NPR, so maybe I'll change the title of mine. So I don't want to seem like this is, copying anybody else, but. And we have Single says, you've been watching since 2015. Thanks for the support all these years and for watching. I've been hearing that a lot. A lot of people say they've just been watching the channel for a long time, and that really speaks volumes to me. And so I'm just so grateful for that. So I see no one really having any questions yet. So there's one thing I did want to open up with that was kind of something I want to get your guys' input on. So in the weekly update, I talked about how Mercedes is planning on doing these downloadable speed boosts. And the whole subscription part of it is kind of annoying because who wants another subscription? But as far as the actual downloadable part, it is something you can buy straight up for a few $1,000s. But it was interesting. Some people said they didn't like that idea of a downloadable thing. If they're buying a car, they want to have the full performance potential of the vehicle already unlocked. And I can understand that point of view, but I also like playing devil's advocate. And I responded to a few comments back then, but I want to see what you guys think about this. Where, in my opinion, a downloadable update is like the same thing as like my Mustang having power left on the table by Ford. And, my Coyote V8 Mustang could do way more power than it does, but, they didn't give me the full potential of that V8 engine, and that's okay. You buy parts, you spend the money to get it faster with the same vehicle that you are adding in extra money to get extra speed out of it. And with that, it's just that you're buying actual parts and you're putting them on and you're doing something more than just unlocking. And so from that standpoint, I guess you feel like you've earned the speed a little bit more. But I think to me, it's like, the same kind of thing. And so it's just cool that you can have it as a downloadable thing. So I'm going to try out something new here. I'm going to do a poll and I'm going to see what you guys think about the downloadable updates here. I'm going to put it up and see what you guys are voting for, because I think it's kind of curious to see what's going on. Sorry, I can't multitask at all. All right, here we go. And clicked it, and so there should be a little pull up there now. You guys can vote and see what you think about it, and whether you think it's the same as spending a few grand to put a supercharger on a Mustang versus just downloading an update for a Mercedes to get the same kind of a boost, and see what you guys think about that. So all right, I got everyone saying no so far, I think. Let me see if I can pull this down. Okay, so seems like most people are not into it here. So, well, actually, I guess it's 56% no. So there's there's a majority that's no, but it's pretty close. All right, now we got a few more people saying yes. So it's now 50-50. This is really fun. I saw this as a new feature YouTube lets you do, so I figured it'd be a little more interactive here. And then I will also, I'm going to get to all the questions and stuff as well, but since we didn't have a ton right off the bat, I figured we'd lead with this and do something a little different this time. All right, so it looks like it's split pretty well 50-50. Interesting. So that's the way a lot of these things go. There's a lot of people that hate these ideas, a lot of people that love them. Another controversial thing too, another little sidetrack, and then we'll get into the questions here. But I saw there was I think someone interviewed some of the GM engineers or someone of the GM on the GM team this past week about the whole thing about them getting rid of Apple CarPlay in their electric vehicles and Android Auto going forward. And supposedly someone was quoted as saying, if you knew what we knew, you would do the same. So clearly there's a lot of behind the scenes story there, but that's another very divisive thing. And I saw there were some comments, people being like, who cares if they can make it better, then great. But a lot of us are also like, wanting that, existing integration and just keeping it the way it is because it works fairly well. So we'll see how that plays out for GM, but they're standing with their stance that they want to just get rid of CarPlay and Android Auto, which is very interesting. Anyway, I'm going to get into the questions here. It looks like, okay, we have the nose winning out here as far as the downloadable speed boost now. It's got a little bit more of a margin there, 59% on the no side. Totally get it. It is annoying to, have to pay extra whenever you buy a vehicle already. But, I think for people that modify their vehicles, especially, hopefully there's a little more understanding for that whole, side of it. But, just is kind of fascinating because we know, Dodge is going to be doing downloadable updates for the Charger EV and the different power stages that are all downloadable. I guess there's a little like key you can buy and you plug that in, kind of like, the existing tuner, things you plug into OBD ports and, kind of similar thing, but it's all just, again, downloadable stuff. This is going to be the way of the future for mods. And it's really the way mods will go, whenever you can't physically put stuff on it, aside from exterior, mods, as far as performance mods goes, that's going to be the way of the future, unfortunately, at least, unless we go back to gas stuff, sometime further off. But anyway, so getting back into the questions here. Let me see. Jacob says, how would you compare Miata versus ALBAR 124? ALBAR 124. I always mispronounce that. So I was actually talking to some other journalists about this recently at another event, and we were kind of weighing the pros and cons. And I mean, for me, I would say I like the styling better. Obviously, that's subjective, but as far as the driving goes, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in both of them, and for me, I definitely like the way the Miata drives better because it has, especially the ND2, has a higher red line. That naturally aspirated engine is so punchy and just feels so good. And the ALBAR, it's got the better sound, I would say, having that turbo, Fiat motor. But with the ALBAR, it has a very narrow power band. I think it redlines 6,500, but you don't really start getting much momentum going until like $3,000 or so. So you have a real narrow power band, and so you're just like, working that 3,000 RPM, and you have to shift it a lot, and that's fine. I like shifting my own transmission. That's part of the fun experience, but it's just a lot of that, and just not. It's just really tricky to stay in the power band, and so as a result, it's going to feel a lot slower. And an ALBAR versus a Miata on a back road or in a drag race, the Miata is going to probably feel faster, especially in ND2 as a result. So, so I guess, okay, let's see, we just got a super chat here. So I'll do that and I'll go back up to the other questions. But Andrea, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. He says, hey, Matt, pulled the trigger on the Type R last week, and wow, what a remarkable performance machine. Apart from the stiff suspension, I think it's Honda's masterpiece. Appreciate you and your channel for the help. Well, I'm glad that the video helped you out, and congrats on getting a Type R. Hopefully you got a good deal on it, and I hope you continue to enjoy it. That's awesome you were able to grab one. And yeah, I love them. I think they're great. And I'm excited to see what the Integra Type S does to change that dynamic a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be tough to improve on the Type R because it is just such a high bar. And I mean, like I mentioned in past live streams and stuff, it's, to me, I have to spend more time with the GR Corolla, but I think I'd probably go Type R between the two. It's so fun. I definitely would take it over a Golf R because they're just a little more sedate compared to the Type R from an experience standpoint, even though the Type R even though the Golf R is probably a little bit quicker. But anyway, thank you so much for the super chat, and yeah, congrats and enjoy that Type R. It's gonna be awesome. And you should let me know in the comments which color you got. I'd love to hear, because so many fun colors for those too. All right, and let me see here. Yeah, so CK also agrees with me about the cars coming detuned from the manufacturers anyway. And Truck and Car Guy says, if I'm buying a car, I would want its full power when I buy it and not waste money paying for a subscription just for the privilege of using the full power. And the subscription thing, definitely, I can get that's annoying, especially, it makes sense a little bit, I guess, if you're leasing it or you plan to flip it quickly. But the fact that they are offering just the straight up buying it part, I think is really nice. But as far as, the full power thing, I guess it depends on, if you modify your car or not. Cause I'd love to hear, like, from people that modify their cars, like, you're also paying to get more, because you don't get the full potential from any car from the factory. Like, never in the existence of a vehicle that at least has a warranty, you never have gotten the full potential of that engine. You've never gotten the full potential. until you modify it. And even then, you probably don't even ever get the full potential unless you're going for a full crazy build and basically maxing out the motor before you have to do, reinforced internals and stuff. But until that point, any motor, if you're not pushing it to 100% of its safety margin there, you're not getting the full potential out of anything. So that's kind of my sticking point there, is I guess people are just, you're used to over the years, thinking that you're getting the full thing whenever you buy a car, but you never are, and any tuner can tell you that. But it's very interesting. It's funny how it's taking a different form, so people are taking a different viewpoint. But whenever it was something that was well known and established, everyone accepted that as normal. And now it's different, so it's not normal anymore, even though to me it's still like the same thing. I don't know, I can't wrap my head around it, but clearly I'm in the minority because 60% say no. So that's why I like being devil's advocate and just seeing what everyone else thinks here. It's the unpopular opinion, clearly. And Copper said, I know you talked about it in the weekly update, but Chevy canceling the Bolt production doesn't make sense to me. They say they want people to move to EVs, yet they're canceling their cheapest one. Yeah, I think they're probably also feeling the pressure of all those pre-orders, and they're seeing the dumpster fire that is Cybertruck pre-orders, and the amount of people that were frustrated whenever they were trying to get the Lightnings and Broncos and stuff. Having a lot of hype is great, but whenever you can't fulfill that demand quickly, people start bailing on those pre-orders and people start backing out, and new competitors come onto the scene and all those types of things. So I think that they probably just want to max out the production of those Silverado EVs and stuff as best as they can. And that means sacrificing the other thing. And also, I mean, they're clearly making a better profit. I think there was actually, someone had commented on it in the weekly update too. I think they lose several $1,000s for every Bolt they sell. So from an accountant's standpoint, I'm sure they're happy to see the Bolt go anyway. Again, you want to be the people's advocate and say, yes, but what about the affordable stuff? But at the end of the day, these companies are about making money. And so if you can sell, one truck for every 5 Bolts, but you're making way bigger of a profit on each one of those, big trucks, then, that's, they don't care what it does to the consumer. If the consumer, as long as the checks are clearing and people are getting the financing, they'll keep churning them out. And it's one of those things you vote with your wallet, and people are trying to vote with their wallet for the Bolts, and hopefully that sends a signal for the Equinox and stuff in the future. But yeah, it is kind of strange, but I think it's just, they just need the production facility now really quickly. And the original one for the Silverado just isn't going to be enough, I guess. So they're probably going to just, try and do more, but it is a bummer for sure. And it's a loss for, the more average middle-class person that, wants an EV. They don't really have too many options anymore. So it's a bummer, but get them while you can. They're going to keep building them till the end of this year. And so it's one of those things, grab it while you can, at least if, that's something you're really into. And CK says, yeah, people bought the 2.0 Accord, even though it's a detuned Type R engine. Another good example, CK. You're right. I didn't even think of that. Truck and Car Guy says, if I want a boost, I'll buy a separate power adder. So to me, that's like, it's just like Mercedes offering that power adder instead, and Ford, even like with the Mustangs, going back to that example, they have, their Ford Performance tunes. So like they want to, even on the gas stuff, they've been wanting to be like, here is a tune that actually keeps the warranty, and you buy it through us, and it's all covered under the you can even bundle into your financing, I think. Same kind of thing. And for gas, it's okay. And now for EVs, it's not. That's just, I keep coming back to that. I don't know. But Dom says the speed boost felt lame at first. Does make sense though. Yeah. And I mean, the subscription thing, again, like I said, I totally get that. I'm not going to repeat myself a million times here, but I think the subscription thing maybe is part of what is irking people a little bit, but as long as they keep offering it as a normal purchase, to me, it's the same as buying a Cobb access port or something, Jacob says, I love car brands models with cool logos like the Mustang, Pony, Ferrari, Prancing Horse, and Jaguar Cat. I feel it gives a personality theme to the vehicle. Thoughts? I totally agree. Yeah, it's really cool. I'd love to hear what some of you guys think about it as well, but I do really like that. It does kind of give a character. And that's one of the things I really always loved about the Mustangs is, it's like your faithful steed, and it's just that imagery and that theme just really, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. I agree. It's a lot more inspiring than calling something the BZ4X or the EV6 or whatever, it's just, it's totally cold for those kinds of things, so I totally get that. Jay says those mods are going to be on the pirate websites. Maybe. And, maybe that's one way, for people that really get annoyed by that stuff, work around it and go find it on, some kind of torrent site or something. That'd be funny. And Jay says the ALBAR 124 with the Ragazon exhaust sounds so good, but the MX-5 will hold better in the long run. Yeah, and that's the one thing, going back to that original question with the MX-5, it's probably going to be a little more reliable for sure too. But anyway, Lewis, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, I just ordered a Camaro LT1 because there are absolutely no cars on the lot. Do you think the inventory issue will get better? It should be getting better. And Camaros, I mean, I can't imagine why they would have inventory issues still, unless they're just trying not to build them or dealers just aren't taking them. Someone's getting Camaros because they're still churning them out. The factory's running. So I don't know where they're going, but there should be some out there. Maybe the LT1s just are more rare possibly, but I'd be curious, how far you expanded your search radius. If it's that way for the entire country, then that is really a interesting thing that I wouldn't expect, but it's good you ordered it, because I mean that it means at least you'll get it eventually, and you're going to get exactly what you want. I love ordering cars. I think it's really fun anyway, and you can track the progress and all that. But good luck on the order. Hopefully it goes smoothly. Hopefully it comes pretty quickly. And thank you once again for the super chat there. Jasbo, thank you so much for becoming a member of the club here as well. I just see your little sticker there. So thanks for joining, and I'll keep an eye out for your questions as well. But getting back to the other questions here. Angel says, I think the slight difference between modding and DLC is that that most times you're buying something physical for your car, so it feels like it's yours. And I can totally appreciate that. That's a good point, Angel. And I can see that kind of, helping it to feel better, because even, I totally get that. For example, all these movies I have up there, I want to own the movie. I want to have it and have a physical copy and have like ownership of that. And so I can see, having the ownership of a mod and having that part, which admittedly you can sell, and maybe, a downloadable thing could potentially boost the resale value of a vehicle, but you probably, it's not the same as being able to resell a part. So I can see that part of it kind of sucking a little bit for sure. And it's a good point though about the physical part of it. And and so I know with the Dodge one, they said they were planning on having it so that mod is tied to the VIN, getting back to the pirating thing. So you're not going to be able to pirate the Dodge ones at least, but I think it's tied to the VIN. So hopefully that keeps it into the car, and as long as the car is physically yours, then the mods should be physically yours as well. But yeah, I mean, it's cool, having the parts and being able to change things for yourself too. That's the one thing you miss out on with the, downloadable thing, is it's their programming. It's not like you can buy a burble tune or a regular tune or, whatever there's less adjustment there. So I can understand that part of it too, not being as ideal for sure, compared to the DLC, where it's just their defined thing and their power delivery for that extra 80 horsepower or whatever. And that's it. So definitely less freedom and flexibility still for sure. And I can see that not being as fun. Triton Car Guy says, Mercedes says AMG, and if they offered something through them, I would be fine with it. Okay, so that's interesting. So if it comes from a performance arm of that company, then that's better than the regular company offering it. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, and also, okay, thank you so much, Triton Car Guy, for gifting 10 memberships. I really appreciate that. And so yeah, everyone that has their gifting turned on here, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think everyone grabbed them. So congrats to everyone that grabbed them. And thank you so much, Trent Cargo, once again, for keeping up your weekly tradition here of gifting those memberships. I really, really appreciate it. But that's a good idea to pass along even to Mercedes in the future, is maybe doing something like having AMG offer that performance stuff instead of someone else. That's totally understandable, I think. And also, I see, sorry, Lewis, I missed your other super chat there. Thank you so much for another one. He said, here in Miami and in the surrounding area, I couldn't find any on the lot, and all the ones in transit were spoken for. I love the channel and the reviews. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Okay, interesting about them not being in Miami. You'd think that'd be an area that, there would be some demand. And one thing, though, I always do say to people is, if you have the time and the flexibility, do a road trip. I drove 4 hours to get the Bullets. I drove 2 hours to get Beth's Mach-E, and that's not very far. So I'm sure you've probably gone at least that far out for the search radius. But, I think there's been some times where, I've told people like, hey, look, this car is halfway on the other side of the country. how badly do you want it? It's even, especially if it's a new car, you don't have to worry about test driving as much. So those you can even ship if you want. And, even if you're spending $600, it might even make sense, to ship a car, spend a few $100 to do that versus paying $3,000 for the markup at your dealer around the corner or something. So that is one good thing is we have a lot of area in this country to, search around and hope that, you can find something somewhere else, but if you're not in a hurry, the ordering thing's cooler anyway, because like I said, you get exactly what you want, and that's awesome. So thank you so much for the super chat there, and keep us posted on how the search goes. Hopefully, it's maybe one pops up, you don't have to wait for your order, or you just wait for the order, and that's great. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, my dealer had 3 V8 Camaros in transit, and they all sold prior to reaching the lot. They are still selling, at least near me. Okay, so that's interesting. So like Lewis said, so they're selling pretty hotly, I guess. I guess the production just isn't great on those, because you would think if they're selling this hotly, then they'd be like, the sales numbers would be better and you'd see it competing better with the Mustang and the Challenger. But I guess they're just not making enough of them to, try and challenge the sales crowns there for some reason. Interesting. All right. So let me see other questions here I don't want to miss. And so Jazz says, I kind of regretted not buying a Saab during its last year of production. So now I'm considering the Stinger, which is also in its last year. Yeah, I think Stingers are great. They'll probably hold up better than a Saab as well. So you probably be, if you're keeping it for a long time, it's probably a safer choice there. But I think the Stingers are great. I would still happily own one if I needed something like that. I think it's just such a great, blend of practicality, comfort, great styling, great performance. Just, it's kind of got it all in my opinion, as long as you don't mind the slightly heavier weight of it. David says the base Equinox EV will start at 30 grand, is meant to replace the Bolt. They're building all new EVs on the Ultium platform. The Bolt uses the old platform they're phasing out. Yeah, definitely true as far as the platform goes, but it's just strange that they, had just kind of got some momentum with it. And I guess, there's just some reason why they have to get rid of the platform at some point as well. And the base Equinox, they say, will start around 30 grand. Hopefully they stick to that. But even if they do, the Bolt, I think the Bolt starts at 26 or something. And, $4 grand, whenever you're talking about stuff in that low price segment, $4 grand could make a big difference. So, there is some of that too, but one thing I will say, so I'll be posting my review of the new Chevy Trax on Tuesday, and that's super affordable and stuff. But the way it is in 2023 here, so many of these base models are so nice that like a base Equinox EV may actually be a pretty nice place to be, even though it is the base version. So hopefully they will be able to turn out a lot of those $30,000 ones, and that can be a decent replacement, even if it is a few grand more. Trucking Car Guy says, having worked at a few dealerships, they usually only stock the more popular or expensive vehicles in the main lot to draw attention. Yeah. So I think that's, it's all about the high profit margins. Manufacturers want to build stuff with lots of options on them. And so that kind of, like you said, kind of it probably extends to the Camaro as well, where the LT1 is, the stripped down V8, the best value for the consumer, but probably one of the worst values for the manufacturer and even the dealer probably. So, it's just one of those things that's not very popular. 1 second, I'm going to end this poll here so it's not just hanging out for the entire time. 64% was the final tally of 64% on those for the downloadable updates there. So thanks everyone that voted on that. And all right, let me see here. Other questions? So we have Yavinder says, hey, Matt, just joining. Thanks for joining us here, and I hope you're having a good weekend as well. Triton Car Guy says, Dodge, for example, has direct connection for those who want to modify the vehicle but keep the warranty. Yeah, and so that's why with Dodge, they're actually, I think their downloadable updates will be through direct connection, and they're really going to expand that and that branding, to, do the downloadable thing here going forward too. And Carla says, hey, Matt, how's everything going? Everything's going great. Having a good weekend here. It's just always fun, especially after I was, on a trip this week. So always coming home after a trip, it's always great to spend that time with the family and, enjoy being home. So hopefully your weekend's going well too, Carlos. Triton Car Guy says maybe Camaros are selling since they're ending production. Yeah, there's definitely probably some of that too. Everyone's scrambling now because they're like, oh wait, I only have another, whatever it is, 7 months or so, or 8 months until they're gone. We got a floating cat hair here. But there's definitely some of that too, I'm sure. Luco, though, thank you so much for the super chat. He says another positive to ordering is the time it takes gives you more time to save up down payment money if you're financing. Very true. Yeah, and it's Yeah, and it's just so fun. I don't know. I mean, I've ordered several cars now at this point, and it's just being able to track them and just the anticipation and just again picking out exactly what you want, having it be exactly the way you want it to be is just it's so fun. Carlos says, I saw a review for the new Chevy Trax and I was honestly impressed for what you get for the price. Yeah, they're very, very impressive. And I'll be talking more about that in my review. I can't talk about driving impressions on the tracks yet, but all the other stuff's kind of out there. And it's a lot of car for the money as far as the interior stuff, the amount of stuff you get for the money. And I was really happy. This is rare that companies do this, but Chevy had a base bare bones tracks there at the event, like with the hubcaps on the steel wheels and everything. It was great. So I did a little walk around of that, and I'm going to post that in my regular review, and I may also post that as just a separate thing down the road too for those who are curious. Who are shopping for just what a base like this is actually what you get for $21,500, and it's still you'll see in my review on Tuesday, but it's really you're not missing out on a ton, and it's one of those ones where I think the base trim is actually the best value in a lot of ways. Now, there are some caveats, and again, I will explain more in my review as far as how that bleeds into the driving dynamics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think Chevy's doing a really good job with the affordable stuff, and there's so many other companies are completely neglecting that whole segment, and Chevy, at least they're putting stuff out there. Whether or not you love it or not, at least they are offering stuff they're trying, and that's more than you can say for a lot of these other mainstream companies. So it's I think it's pretty good. And the Avenger says, hey Matt, wondering how your cats are doing. Remember you bring them in some videos. Yeah, the cats are doing great. We have two long haired cats here, which is why there's always cat hair floating around everywhere, but they're doing great. Yeah, they're getting up there. The one's I think gonna be 8 years old this year. Yeah, so they're the other one's 6 now. We're gonna be 6 soon. So yeah, they're doing great. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that. And Jay says, not surprised car OEMs are going subscription way. Now people don't own music or movies since it's all streaming. Yeah, and I think though with the stuff that I've seen, like the Mercedes and the Dodge and stuff, I believe they will let you just do a straight up purchase, so you're not having to subscribe to a mod for the rest of your life or something, because that's kind of ridiculous. So as long as they keep offering a flat purchase price, it doesn't bother me too much. The Trunk Car guy said, if I had money, I'd probably be looking into a V8 right now. Yeah, it's now's the time to buy them for sure. I mean, Chevy is committed to doing a V8 for a long time in their trucks and stuff still, and there's some others out there, but yeah, it's slowly the end of an era, little by little, I think. And let me see here. Copper says Chevy's also finally figured out how to be competitively priced with their cars. Yeah. So I think that's one thing I actually mentioned at the weekly update is with the Buick and Vista. Like that actually finally has a good starting price. Every other Buick was so bloated, and this one for once is priced well. So it's really refreshing to see. All right. And Omar's spamming the comments again here. When am I driving the Grand Highlander? It'll be very soon. I'll be driving it very soon. I'm not sure when the embargo though for it will be happening. So I even though I'm going to be driving it soon, I don't know when Toyota is going to let us reveal that drive, and those impressions and all that. So to be determined still, but it's coming soon, Omar. I appreciate the interest. It'll be posted here relatively soon, so you don't have to wait too much longer. And let me see. Hugo says, I can't wait for the Chevy Colorado Bison to come. Do you think Chevy will come out with a supercharged Silverado? I don't know. It's one of those things I've heard, like I can't remember where, but someone mentioned like, oh yeah, like, there could be something like that coming down the road, but they're so far behind that that ship is going to be sailed by the time they come out with it. And so I think it's going to be a little too late if it does end up ever coming. I mean, I'm not going to be upset about it arriving if it does come in a year or two, but it's just, it just seems like this is the time to do that now, and I also am skeptical about them wanting to tank their Cafe and Zev, rankings. And so I don't know. I personally think they missed the boat. They're probably not going to do anything in the near future and probably won't ever get around to it potentially. And there's a lot of stuff, like I was just on the GMC Canyon and Chevy Trax event this past week, and I was sitting down next to GMC's designer. I had dinner next to the designer of GMC. And, like someone else at the table mentioned, well, like, you know, we really like, certain things about the Canyon and all that stuff. You're just talking about the truck. And then someone was just like, yeah, and we really just want to see this vehicle, but an SUV version. Like make this. And I chimed in, yeah, just call it the Jimmy, put a cab on the back of this Canyon and call it the Jimmy and call it a day. And, just have a new GMC Jimmy. It'd be awesome. And like his response, and I mean, this isn't like anything confidential because he was just like, we would like that too. That was his response. Is we would like that too. So I mean, all these people in these companies, they're enthusiasts. They have their dream wish list of things they want to do as well. It's just you have the higher ups that shoot stuff down, the accountants that can't justify the business case for things, and there's a lot of vehicles that all of us would love to see made. That GM CEO would probably love to make as well, but they're also in the business of looking out for shareholders and looking out for the profitability of the company. And so, even if you have all the power and you're the one that holds the keys, there's still sometimes your hands are tied. And unless you are okay just blowing money, kind of like Akio Toyota was at Toyota with some of these sports cars that probably are not very profitable, but they're passion projects. You can push that stuff through. And if you're huge enough like Toyota or potentially like GM, you can kind of do that. But I think GM also just probably feels a little less secure in doing that because they're so desperately trying to chase Tesla and all these other vehicles and try and catch up that, doing pet projects for the fun of it is just probably something that isn't on the agenda very, very often, and so they got some cool stuff through with the Corvette team and the Cadillacs and stuff like that, and it's just one of those things you can't have it all, I guess. We'll see. Maybe, they will someday be able to justify some type of GMC Jimmy or something. I don't know, but at least we know the designer would love to do it. And I've talked to designers of lots of brands and say, sure, we'd love to do all these crazy things. Sure, we'd love to build the concept exactly the way the concept was, but we can't do it, and there's just certain realities that, they have to reconcile, and it's just the way it goes with that. But it'd be fun, we can all dream. And trucking car guys, it'd be easier. Okay, so we're talking. Someone's talking about learning manual, and yeah, definitely trying to practice on a more affordable vehicle, so you don't feel bad about burning up the clutch is certainly the way to go. But Kurt, the boy wonder, thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry for the wait there. He says, "How big a wing on my Outback to help downforce?" As big as you feel comfortable with. That if that's a serious question, then I'd say. It depends on what your goals are, how much downforce you're looking for. So yeah, that's a tricky one though, because the Outback obviously is not going to be a great vehicle from a downforce standpoint, no matter what. And so it's one of those things you got to also evaluate, how much money to put into a car that you already have to get it to where you want it to be versus just cutting your losses there, selling it, getting something else that has a better starting point to reach your goals in a more cost efficient manner. It's just going to come down to that, I guess. But yeah, I don't know if I've actually seen a large wing on an Outback ever in my life. So I'd be the first one. It'd stand out for sure. Thank you so much for the super chat. Naluko, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, if Toyota came out with a compact truck like the Maverick, but dropped the RAV4 hybrid with all-wheel drive in it, that powertrain, it would be a Maverick Killer. I agree. And there's been talks of, rumors of Toyota doing something like that they're working hard on some type of small truck. They're just trying to figure out, do they make it Maverick size? Do they make it a little bigger? Do they make it a little smaller? And I think every company, after they saw how wildly popular the Maverick is, everyone's trying to explore that segment and saying, okay, wow, well, Ford got away with using, a compact crossover platform for a truck and they can't build enough of them. How can we do this as well? It's an easy moneymaker. And especially if you got a decent parts bin like, Toyota does, 100%. There's going to be a Maverick competitor coming from Toyota. I'm almost certain. It's just my own hunch, but it just seems like it makes too much sense to not do it. And so, it'll probably be RAV4, but there's also, I think there was talks of something like Corolla based, just like an actual car based thing, and just throw a bed on the back of it and do something like that to even undercut the Maverick potentially. Because, that's a big savings. If you have, like a Corolla, but then you don't have to carpet the trunk, you don't have to have a back seat, you don't have to have rear airbags, you don't have to have any of that stuff. You just make it a truck bed and make it a two-door, two-seater or something like that. Then you can come out with a lower starting price because you don't have very much to it, so it's an intriguing idea, but I think there's something coming. There's got to be something coming, especially with Toyota's heritage and their past of having small little affordable trucks. I think that it's something that make a lot of sense to do. And let me see here. want to miss any other member questions. Yavinder says, do you think Honda got rid of the 2.0T for the Accord so customers look at the Acura TLX? What I gathered is that they just really need to catch up in the electrification segment, and they just, the only way to increase that adoption is to, just say it has to be hybrid. It's saying you want a nice Accord, you have to have a hybrid. And I mean, some people might not agree with that kind of strong arm tactic for doing it, but if they gave people the choice of 2.0T or hybrid for the touring trim and even just had them alongside each other, how many people are going to pay the extra for the hybrid? Some people who drive a lot and do a lot of stop and go stuff, potentially you can see, there'll be a business case there for it from a, consumer side. But I think that it was just, they really need to boost the hybridization, and you may see the same thing at Acura. I mean, it might end up going the same way. It's just that the TLX and all that is a little bit further behind, but you may see the same kind of stuff, follow that trend too. I don't know. I mean, I think Acura, those buyers also expect a little more performance, so they'd have to probably, boost that hybrid powertrain a little more to give you something that you would expect out of a TLX, because they don't want to have copy powertrains. They want to have that differentiation. And that's why the TLX always had more power than the Accord 2.0T, I think, by a little bit, right? It wasn't a huge difference, but if my memory serves me right, there was a little bit more there. And the fact you could get it with the all-wheel drive, I guess. But yeah, I think it's just, they just really need to just boost their hybrids. And they're seeing what Toyota's doing and how Toyota does offer the choice of, gas or hybrid, still even for the higher trims. But I think their way of catching up and saying, hey, we're going to have 50% of our sales be electrified really soon, is to just basically lock out, those higher trims unless you get the hybrid. So might be brilliant, might be messed up depending on how you look at it, but I think it's going to be effective at getting them to the electrification, threshold they want to be at. So, and that'll save them in, cafe credits and all that kind of stuff too. So until they get an actual electric vehicle in their lineup and get, some more options out there as far as the EVs go, I think doing the hybrid thing is definitely, the smarter way for them. So someone's asking about Mitsubishi Pajero's EVA in the US here. Yeah, we don't get the Pajero. I don't think I've ever actually seen one on the American streets personally. And so that's one of those vehicles that's for the rest of the world, but sadly not for us. And let me see. So CK says, seeing how manufacturers are moving towards EVs, is there a specific sports car you were looking forward to seeing the EV version of? It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the one that we already know about is the Charger EV. I'm actually really excited for the Charger EV. I was kind of pumped for it right from the get-go, and I can't justify or afford any kind of other, car right now. But if I have the disposable cash, I would actually really like to have a Charger EV alongside the Bullet for just different experiences, having something fun. And also, anyone who knows the Bullet thing knows, I love my Mustang Bullet and I love the connection to the movie Bullet. I'm a huge fan of the movie. And so for me, having a black Charger EV that looks like the 68 Charger next to the Mustang that pays homage to the 68 Mustang from that movie, having them side by side in the garage, having the villain car and the hero car would be kind of cool. So there's also some of that playing at my heartstrings a little bit. So I would love to see, and I'm excited for that. It's probably one of the EVs I'm most excited about. And also just because, Dodge is doing these cool new things with having an actual exhaust system with actual pipes, trumpeting the sound for that EV. And just the way it looks, just, I don't know. At least as long as it looks like mostly like the concept, I really am digging the Charger EV. And that is like the one vehicle. So, Beth has the Mach-E and she really wanted the electric thing. And I'm excited about the Mach-E. It's a great vehicle as well. I really do like it. And it's great for our family. But as far as me, like if there were like a vehicle, if I had to like go towards the EV side, or if it was something that, I wanted to do, Charger EV would probably be my pick as far as stuff I would actually put my own money towards, as far as electric stuff goes. It's just so sweet. I think they did such a good job on the styling of that thing. But aside from that, I can't think of any others off the top of my head that I'm excited for an electric version of. I'm sure if I had a little more time, I'd probably be able to come up with a better answer for you. But yeah, I'm curious to hear if there's any others that you guys are really excited to see. So let me know in the comments here of any others that you're looking forward to. Maybe that'll trigger some extra creativity in my brain too. But let me see. Alexander says, do you think a new El Camino or Ranchero would sell today? Think of the Holden Ute down in Australia before GM killed them off. 100%. there's rumors how Chevy's working on some type of El Camino type of thing. Whether it's called that or not, I don't know. But that there was talks that they were actually shopping around, I believe, a two-door thing. And so that makes me really think it's going to be called the El Camino if it does come out. But then they're considering that it might be too small and that they would do something bigger. But they were talking about like a low roof two-door truck. And I say 110% yes, put it out there. I think would do really well and just be really cool. And I think same thing with the Ford Ranchero. I think, the Maverick kind of fills those shoes. But if Chevy can justify a two-door thing, and if Toyota can do some type of really, really cheap, two-door truck, then maybe you have a slot beneath the Maverick for a Ranchero or something. That could be fun. But yeah, I 100% think they would both sell really well. So let me see here. Oh, Wild Frames, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, great job, Matt. Let's cover something about Mazda CX90. Do you think this is the proper way for Mazda? Many companies already failed to penetrate premium segments like Infiniti and some others. And thanks so much for watching from Bulgaria as well. That's so cool. And so as far as CX90, as far as whether it will be the proper way for them, we have to wait and see how it plays out for them. I don't know. I could go either way because I think one of the appeals of Mazda currently, the reason why they sell so many CX-5s and many of their other vehicles is that you get the premium feeling, but it's not a premium price. And CX-90 is kind of interesting because I think they're kind of hedging their bets with the CX-90. If you look, the way it's priced, at least here in the States, you have the regular turbo models, which really do compete very well with the Palisades and the Tellurides as far as feature content for your dollar. You basically the slow turbos max out, right around where a Palisade calligraphy maxes out, something like that, in the low 50s. And I think they're really smart to do that because you have, I want to, cross shop this with a Honda Pilot or whatever. Those people will be happy. They get the turbo. They don't care about having the most power or the sportiest thing. So for those people, it's great. It ticks that box and they're getting a more premium feeling vehicle for a non-premium price. And then though, you have the two-pronged approach. If you have the plug-in hybrid, and then you have the Turbo S, and the Turbo S with that extra power, that and the extra touches that has, that kind of goes after the X5 and stuff like that a little bit more. And, we will see what the take rate is. I believe, if I can remember Mazda's forecasting, I think they said they expect it to be a pretty good split between the regular turbo and the Turbo S. Like they're expecting a decent amount of demand for that Turbo S model. And the plug-in hybrids, I think the smaller appeal of the three. But, we will see. I think the Mazda name also is going to hold them back a little bit, because it has, an attachment, a connection to that name. Same thing why, there's so many people that still hate Kia because it's a Kia or a Hyundai because they're still dwelling in the Hyundais and the Kias of 20 years ago. And it's hard to change some people's perception and, open people's mind to the fact that things can change in 20 years and people can improve and vehicles can improve. And, that kind of stuff is possible. And, so it could be the same thing with Mazda where they're fighting an uphill battle. People have been like, oh, it's just a Mazda. It doesn't have a prestigious badge. No one's going to be impressed when I tell them I have a Mazda, it's that type of a thing. And so I think it will be a struggle, but if the products are there and they're really solid, then I could see it, because you also see it going the other way, people that, you had, like you mentioned Infiniti, but also like here in the States, you have Buick and some of these others where, Buick likes to think of themselves as a premium brand. And they're a little more expensive than the average Chevy, but it's, I don't think anyone really views Buick on the same level as Lexus, for example, so it's like, it can also go the wrong way too. So, there's some of that as well, where if, there's some opportunities where some people are maybe disappointed by a Buick, for example, or they're disappointed by, an Acura or an Infiniti or something like that. I think Mazda's job is getting the marketing money out there flowing to really change people's perception and come out with a really good ad campaign of like, hey, are you considering, and, put it on even like, one of the things that companies like to do now is do these pre-roll ads before a YouTube video. If someone's watching a review of my, Acura MDX or something like that and have a thing up, are you considering an MDX? Check out the CX90. It has all these really sweet things that you can't get in an MDX or whatever the case might be, and really try and do those things to change that perception, then I think they could be successful. And I just don't know if it will ever, I don't think it'll ever be as prestigious as the established luxury brands that have been luxury their entire lives and have that 100 years of history to lean on and from a, brand recognition standpoint. But I think Mazda is going to, as long as they continue to be the value luxury option, I certainly think that it can be the right choice for them. But I know it's something a lot of people are skeptical about, and I totally agree. It will be tough, but I think it's not impossible, and I don't think they're crazy for trying it. As long as they keep the affordable stuff that competes with the mainstream stuff as well, and they don't get too big of a head and think that they're too good to compete with the regular stuff. As long as they still stay grounded, I think that they could be successful with offering, a Mazda Plus kind of thing for some of the others. Great question. Thank you so much for the super chat there. I get back to the member questions here. Let me see. Dom says, hey, are there any fast chargers for residential use? And wasn't there an EV that is supposed to charge in 10 minutes? I don't think there's anything out there currently. I think the best charge times right now are Porsche Taycan and the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. Those all do 18 minutes to go 10% to 80% charge. I think it's the fastest I've seen. Something around there. As far as fast chargers for residential use, I don't really think there's really much of that right now, typically because residential stuff, you have to, I guess it's the same thing where you have a developer that has to pay to put it there. But I think residential kind of, people don't want brandos coming into their residential area and, charging. And, I think it's one of the things eventually there will have to be residential EV charging, but I think with residential use, you're primarily looking at level 2 stuff because you're assuming people are parking there overnight because they're living there. And so, it could be handy to have, maybe one fast charging port or something. But I think for residential stuff, just the key is, for apartment complexes and stuff, just doing level 2 and having enough of those. And so even if it doesn't charge super fast, if at least you have some decent charging speeds to get a respectable amount of juice while you're at home for a few hours, I think that could certainly be a nice stopgap until everything's fast charging and, that's a little cheaper and less hard to do in the future. But I really think it for now makes sense to put the fast chargers on the highways and stuff like that when people are road tripping. Because, if you have a garage, you have a driveway, you can have your charger there for yourself, and you have to, it makes more sense, if you're an EV buyer to have those things so that you can just, plug in and charge every night and never have to worry about fast charging like we do. We used a fast charger just, for our road trip last fall. And other than that Mach-E has never seen a fast charger. It's because there's no need for it, And Hugo says, so Matt, are you considering trading your Bullet for the new Dark Horse? I know, or the new Mustang is absolutely gorgeous. I know you want to. I definitely do not want a Dark Horse. For me, it just has no appeal to me. I don't like the interior. I also don't love the exterior. I still like the exterior better on my current Mon. And I also love the Bullet thing. I really love the dark green. I love the connection to the movie, the more retro thing. So for me, the Bullet is more than just a Mustang. It is like a movie car homage. I'm a sucker for movie car homages. So for me, it's the only thing would come close to getting my attention would be another Bullet edition of the S650. But even that, they would really, really, really have to like change the S650 a lot for me to ever go for that. I don't like the huge screens in the new Mustang. Personally, for a vehicle I would buy, I like having the signature interior, styling trait of the double hooded dash. They completely threw that out into the trash can for the new S650. There's no historical connection on the inside at all. It's just all modern, and that's great. And from a reviewer standpoint, it'll be competitive. They will have the biggest screens. They will have the most tech in the segment, and it will get good marks, I'm sure, from that. But, from my personal standpoint, I don't love enormous screens all the time, and especially not in a vehicle where you're sitting low and looking out over those screens is kind of a pain. So no, I am not into the Dark Horses at all. Personally, I respect it. I think it will be impressive. I can't wait to drive one and review one. But you could offer me a Dark Horse as a free trade for my Bullet, and I would say no. Because I love the Bullet that much. So call me crazy, but that's my stance personally. And Carla said, so Matt, if you didn't have the Bullet and the twins did not exist, what sports car would you get? So you already know that I would say GRD6, but if those didn't exist as well, what would I buy? It would probably be a tie. So if I didn't have a kid, it would be Supra. But now that we have our daughter, I always want a vehicle with a back seat so I can take her with me. So it's tough. I don't know. If I had to be two doors, I'd probably say BMW M2. Even though I haven't driven the new one, but just the old one, I would probably still like. If it wasn't that, we come down to the price points as far as, but if we're talking something around the same price as the Bullet, um, I don't know. I'd probably end up, if it wasn't the M2, it'd probably be something four doors. And I don't know. It'd be tough. I'm tempted by the new Integra Type S. We'll see how that ends up turning out, but that kind of speaks to me as being like the more low key version of the Type R and a little more comfortable. I like some of those creature comforts. So maybe that potentially, but I don't know. If I spend more time with the GR Corolla and really love that, then it could be that. Type R would be something I'd happily own as well, but I'd probably have to do a wing delete because for me the wing is just a little too much for a daily driver. But yeah, it's tough. There's also some others that I'd be tempted by, like a TLX Type S. Yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff, honestly. It'd be really tough for me. So I'm thankful that I don't live in an alternate reality where there are no Mustangs or GR86s or BRZs. But that would be probably my top ones off the top of my head. Jay says an EV S2000 comeback would be interesting. 100% agree. That would be awesome. That's one that, yeah, I would be really interested in seeing that. And, we have seen that Honda's teased a new coupe that'll be beneath the NSX. That'll be something I'm excited to see, happen. But yeah, I'd love to see an EV S2000. That'd be really cool. But Damien says he thinks that'd be a waste if Honda is planning to bring back the S2000. It has to have an internal combustion engine. Yeah, but I think that is one thing. Someone else is commenting about this recently, where they were like, it seems like it's going to be a little easier to bring back some sports cars in the future if you can share that platform, because that's the whole thing that makes a lot of these sports cars never come to fruition, is the fact you have to do a unique platform, you have to do a new engine, you have to do all these unique things, and starting from the ground up with all those things is extremely expensive. But if you can, take a platform and it's a Lego car and you can just take, for example, like I was commenting in the weekly update this week how their Genesis has trademarked GT90, GT80, GT70, GT60. And, it might be unthinkable to be like, oh, well, they can't do 4 different sports cars. But if you just take the EV6 GT, the, Ioniq 5N platform, and then you style anything else you want to fit that platform and that wheelbase, yes, you still have some hurdles there as far as putting it into production, having the facility to make it. There's some stuff there. And yes, you still have to uniquely tune the suspension and do some work there. It's not like you're just phoning it in, but it's a whole lot easier starting from 50% completion than 0% completion, So I think you may see more sports cars as a result of the EVs, and you'll have the EVs to thank for this maybe sports car revival, or even coupe. In Genesis case, it could just be coupes and convertibles that are more common because you have a little bit of the Lego car thing kind of happening. And, would people be as excited about that versus a new gas engine S2000? You're right. Probably more people would rather see the gas engine thing. But again, when we're talking about market realities and how little these things they would sell, regardless of what was powering it, even if it was a gas one, they're not going to sell a ton of them, so it's just one of those things. If they can justify it with an EV platform, but they can't justify it with a gas platform from money standpoint, I'd rather have an EV S2000 than no new S2000 at all. Personally, I'm one of those ones, take what you can get, and that's it. But I know a lot of people that's just be a deal killer, and I totally understand that point as well, because especially with the S2000, the one thing is that crazy high revving engine, and you'd miss out on that for sure. So I can appreciate both viewpoints, but I think hopefully we may see more sports cars in the electric era down the road. And Carlos said, so I've finally broken in my 86, and it's such a different car now that I can drive it how it's supposed to be driven. I reclined it, or redlined it, and it was so fun, way quicker than I expected. That's awesome. I'm so glad you got to do the red line run this week, and congrats on going past that break-in period there. They're so much fun. They sound so good in those higher RPMs and stuff. Yeah, I can only imagine the huge smile on your face after doing that this week. It's gonna be so fun, and Yeah, I'm still hoping that there's another excuse for me to review another GR86 here in the press fleet down the road. I'm hoping they get one of those 10th anniversary ones in at some point so I can say, hey, it has a new exhaust. Better test that out. And then just use that as an excuse to have another week with one. Yvender says, what do you think the future of emergency vehicles would be with most manufacturers wanting to go electric? Emergency vehicles like a fire truck or a heavy tow truck need a lot of power and are heavy. Definitely. So yeah, I don't know how that would play out for them. I think there was what was it? So with the new EPA things for 2032, they were saying how they want to have heavy duty stuff be electric as well, of course. But I think they were primarily talking about like non-emergency stuff, like dump trucks and like even as far as like public work stuff goes, they're talking about like school buses, garbage trucks, stuff like that, where there's not as big of a deal for that kind of stuff. I mean, the weight certainly is an issue with those as well, but in the case of the school bus, you're better off with a heavier vehicle because it's safer. As far as the fire trucks and stuff, I guess there's a certain limit of like, them being, not being able to go over bridges and stuff if they're insanely heavy already, and then you add batteries to make them even crazy heavier. But I mean, the thing that works, with fire trucks, at least they don't drive very far. Every town has their own fire station. So you could have a really low range fire truck and actually be totally fine. So I think it would actually work great for fire trucks as long as the weight isn't a problem. As far as tow trucks, that's where you come into a problem. And I think tow trucks and that kind of falls into the semi truck segment where that to me, probably will make more sense to do hydrogen. And I think that's why that's really being heavily researched, especially for those long haul and heavy duty kind of purposes where you have those types of things. But when you're talking about like a heavy duty tow truck, there's not that many of those out there that if those continue to be these smokestacks that guzzle gas, there's only a few of them, so it's not as big of a deal and something that we need to hurry up and change as quickly as the millions of cars that get put on the road every year. So I can see that not being as high of a priority potentially, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And Triton Car Guy says diesel vehicles will take a lot more R&D to make realistic replacements with the demands put on them. Yeah. And so it's just going to come down to whether that stuff increases and gets to the point where it needs to be, to meet those use cases. I'm sure it'll happen sooner or later. It's just, how long will that take? But I think that's why that whole segment in general is moving slower typically than most of the other, parts of, the transportation sector. And, so I don't think there's too much of a rush for those, for that reason. And Carlos said, do you see the drag race the Throttle House did with the CX90 X5 and the GLE? The Mazda is quick. I did not see that. So yeah, I have to check that out and see how it compares. I also do know though, I haven't watched the drag race, but I know, I drove the X5, even a regular X5. Those things are quick. The regular GLE is not quite as fast, but yeah, their X5 is no joke though, that's for sure. But CX90, it was strong. You watched my video, I was impressed. It's funny though, I think the plug-in hybrid version pushed me in the back of my seat a little bit harder thanks to that electric, jolt. But whenever you're talking about traditional power delivery, that Turbo S is great, and it's impressive. So yeah, I have to check out that Throttle House video. And Goth Rocker says, Matt, enthusiasts don't care, but my Lincoln dealer told me Lincoln is seriously considering bringing over the Lincoln Zephyr that is only sold in China. It's no Continental, but it'd be nice to see here. I agree. It's kind of strange to me that they reserve so much for China. I get the Chinese buyers actually buy more of them, and so it's just the fact that we don't buy enough of them here in the States to bring it over here. But I think so. I read an article in the past week or two here where some of the American manufacturers are starting to worry because a lot of Chinese buyers are now buying Chinese vehicles, and the Chinese stuff is also advancing so quickly that they are more competitive than they were before. And so more and more buyers are abandoning the traditional Lincoln purchase and Buick purchase that many Chinese buyers used to go for. And now they're going for, BYD and all these other brands instead. And that's really bad because like Buick is only in existence basically because of China. And like, I think China's kind of been subsidizing the American side of Buick for a while now, because otherwise they probably would have maybe even gotten taken out back with the whole, bailout back in 2008 or whatever. So, and I've been hearing about that change. And so if it continues down that path, then one, you might see like companies like Lincoln trying to buoy that by saying, well, okay, we're selling less in China. Maybe we'll ship some over to the States and try and get the 5 people that still want a Lincoln sedan, and try and do that if they can justify the import costs and stuff. I mean, I would love to see the Zephyr here. I think it'd be great. It looks awesome, and I think it'd be also a cool differentiator for Lincoln. I think Lincoln always, I think sometimes hates living in the shadow of Ford and having nicer Fords essentially. And so like that's one big thing with the Nautilus. Right now, the new Nautilus they just revealed is not sharing a platform with any other Ford, at least in the States here. So it's a unique thing, and I think Lincoln's really relishing in that, for a while. And so I'm thinking that could be another thing. If Ford still wants to say, "Hey, we're not doing any fusion," fine, but have Lincoln bring it over, make it a premium thing to have a sedan, and then that gives them something also unique to say, "Ha, you can't go to your Ford dealer and get this for any cheaper." Like you got to go and go for the Lincoln version, and that could be something potentially as well that could make sense. So I don't know, but your Lincoln dealer might not be far off. It's the first time I've heard of that though. So thanks for sharing that. I might even mention that in a weekly update here in the future if you don't mind. I can give you credit for sure. But that's cool. I really hope that ends up happening. Two Track Jack says, I always thought Ford missed a ready-made opportunity not importing the Falcon Heat from Australia. Yeah, that would have been a really cool way to keep the Australian market afloat with those jobs and everything instead of just killing off that whole division basically. So yeah, would have been cool. I don't know about the use. I think maybe that would have been too early. Maybe it's just one of those things that the rest of the world still really loved, but it just wasn't something that it's one of those things that's super popular in Europe, but not here in the States. Much like hatchbacks and all these other things that are more logical and make sense, and Europeans recognize that, but here in America, it's just one of those things where it's like if you get in a truck, you got to be sitting 5 feet off the ground, and you got to be feeling like a king of the road, and maybe it just wouldn't fit an American buyer. I don't know. And Hugo says, I also got my buddy Paul Anderson to watch your live Q&As because we love watching your videos. If you can give him a shout out, that'd be awesome. Thanks for joining in on the live stream here, Paul, and hope you're enjoying the channel. And thanks, Hugo, for sharing the channel with your friends. That's always appreciated. And which trim of the Canyon did you like the most? So that goes into driving impressions. So that's kind of stuff that I can't really talk about because of the embargo. But what I can say is that the Canyon has, there's the various different trims, and they're all really well done for, I think, what you're getting. And there's, as far as, the exterior and the interior, that's the part I can talk about for now. I'm very impressed with that part of the Canyon, and you have to stay tuned for the rest of my impressions. But you'll definitely be seeing in my video which version of the Canyon is my favorite. But they're all great in their own ways, though. So Ace of Spades says Genesis had a great thing going for them pre-pandemic. Then they got hit by inflation bug, and the value factor is gone at the current pricing. Mazda has placed themselves with the CX90 and 70. Where Genesis was. Interesting. I didn't know. Maybe that flew under my radar. I didn't think Genesis raised their prices any more than anybody else, but I'll have to look into that and see because that could be interesting. I didn't realize that. So that's another thing. If everyone else is going up market even further, like Mercedes and all them are saying, "Oh, we don't want to sell, CLAs anymore. We want to just keep going up and up," then that opens up prime real estate for Mazda to be like, "Hey, if you can't afford a C class, but you still want something more luxurious, here's a nice Mazda 3 Turbo or whatever, and do something like that." Dom said, I meant a fast charger that goes into your garage, for example, speaking about the residential fast charging previously. I don't think there's anyone that can do that just because you would have to have a lot of space for a fast charger. If you look at fast charging stations, there is like an enormous transformer, and the power draw, I think, is even beyond what most residential areas can even do. You have to put in a whole ton of stuff to make that happen. And it's also just overkill because, if you're parking your vehicle at home, everyone has to sleep at some point. So you just charge it while you're sleeping, even if you only sleep for 4 or 5 hours. On a level 2 charger, most of these EVs, unless the battery is enormous, you can, on a level 2 charge, you can get back to close to 100%, especially if you're not at zero by the time you roll into your garage. Level 2 charges everything overnight easily. So even if you're a workaholic and you work from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m., you still got a 12-hour window to charge that, and that's more than enough for a level 2. So I don't think there's ever going to be a use case where a fast charger makes sense in a home personally. I guess maybe if you have an Airbnb or something, or if you're constantly turning over your house every other day to road trippers, maybe that could, bed and breakfast or something. But aside from that, I don't think there's really much use for it. And Damien says he wouldn't mind a collaboration for the S2000. Doubt BMW would want to make a Roadster again, seeing how nobody buys Z4s and people buy Supers instead. Yeah, I think one thing that would be cool potentially, Honda has their partnership with GM. Maybe if GM wants to get back into doing some type of new little, convertible, call it the Corvair, maybe call it, I mean, they could even just do a new like little Fiero or something like that. Or even Solstice they could bring back if they wanted, or Sky. I wish the Saturn brand would come back. I still think I've ranted about that many times before, but I think Saturn would be the perfect exclusively EV brand for GM. It'd be so cool. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to see a partnership. I'm open to partnerships, but that's another thing where you then immediately exclude a bunch of people who say, oh, I want it to be fully Honda engineered. Just like with a Super, a lot of people are like, oh, it's a BMW, so I have no interest. And, so you can't win, you can't make everybody happy. So it's trying to get the biggest piece of the pie you can get and hoping for the best with that bet, and that's kind of the juggling act that these companies have to worry about. And let me see here. So, Goth Rocker says, Matt, Mazda is really fantastic. I feel like they should make a new luxury name for these higher end cars, like Toyota has Lexus and all those. Hold on, I lost my place because it randomly started loading more comments here. Man, all right, I missed a bunch of stuff. Let me see. Where'd it go? I don't know why I just randomly loaded a bunch of extra comments. Yeah, it like completely made me lose my spot. Give me a second, guys. Okay, here we go. I'll try and get caught up too. I'm going to do some faster answers here. But as far as, okay. Toyota has Lexus, Honda has Acura, Nissan has Infiniti, Mazda needs a new Mazda 6 all-wheel drive sedan. Yeah, all that. They said this, no one buys sedans. So they said the second people start buying sedans, they'll happily make a new Mazda 6. That's what the powertrain engineer told me directly. So Mazda 6 is just coming down to people buying enough sedans. As far as the luxury branding thing, I think that could certainly help, but then that's also an uphill battle, of like, okay, we have this new brand. Now we need to raise awareness for it. No one's heard of it before. And then you have to also one up Mazda, which is already kind of there at the top. It's like, okay, a CX90 already has heated seats, heated steering wheel, cooled seats. I guess you could add massage and maybe a few other things, but how do you justify that luxury brand? As far as that goes, and you have to do a new styling direction and new dealerships. It's just, I mean, you're seeing Genesis experiencing this in real time, the gigantic headache of even trying to sell Genesis out of Hyundai dealers and how people say the experience is terrible. And they're, and Genesis has been around for already a decade or whatever, and they're still struggling with this. So yeah, it'd be nice for Mazda to do that, but I'm sure that's just a very daunting task that I'm sure no one wants to, go down that road. So I guess they're going to try, just sticking with the Mazda brand, see how that works and go from there. Copper says, I understand from an enthusiast point of view, but from a normal person view, I don't think Mazda needed to do the rear-wheel drive platform because your normal consumer doesn't care if it's rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive based, point being the MDX. Very true. And that's why I think myself and most other people were really surprised when this whole thing came out. The whole thing, Mazda is a small company. And so, I'm just talking about how everyone's struggling to justify, new platforms, new engines, all this stuff. For Mazda to do a new rear-wheel drive platform, spin the engine, to be longitudinal, and then you also are doing a brand new engine, and then you're going against the trend. You're making a bigger engine with turbos when everyone else is downsizing. It's just like, it's almost like Mazda is living in an alternate reality. I want to be in that alternate reality. That sounds great to me, but I don't know how they're justifying it from an accountant standpoint. Their accountant must be like pounding whiskey, praying that this works out for them, because these are enormous costs and they have no one helping them. It's all on their own. And so I agree. If I was running Mazda, I would have not have done that. From a cost standpoint, it just seems like it's crazy. I love them for it. I love the craziness, but I would hate to see their engineering costs and how long it's going to take for them to pay that stuff off. But we'll see though. I mean, one thing I will say is it really gives them credibility. You have a BMW buyer that is die in the wool, the BMW or life, that's it for them. But then you say, hey, this thing is actually rear-wheel drive, actually has a longitudinal engine. and it's, a straight six with a turbo, and it might even be a little more reliable than a BMW. We'll have to wait and see, but it's they're really putting their best foot forward there, and yeah, I hope it works out for them. I think that everyone else is really biting their nails though, because if Mazda can pull this off and actually have it be a business success, then Acura, Infinity, all of these people are going to probably have to go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, do we follow Mazda, or do we then have an inferior product from a platform standpoint, or do they just consign themselves to the fact they're going to be Honda Plus, Nissan Plus in a lot of ways, and just live in that space and just embrace that and continue to embrace that, or if they'll chase Mazda, I don't know. But I don't know how they approved any of that stuff. And I should have asked the engineers there, but it's one of those things you don't want to look a gift horse in the face. I'm like, I'm just happy this stuff exists. I don't want to put any doubts in anyone's minds. I'm sure they already have their own doubts about whether this is going to pay off for them or not. But I really got to respect it. They are basically the only company to be that bold. No one else. This was a really big thing about the CX90. And I said this in my review, like no one else, when they went from one generation of something, even though it's a new thing with the CX90, going from CX9 to CX90, new platform, new drivetrain setup, new engine placement, new engine, and a plug-in hybrid, as well as the turbo thing. Like all these new things, it's wild. It's really, really wild. I'm excited. I am going to actually I have it already scheduled on my press car schedule. I'm going to be getting a CX90 Turbo S to have for a week and really get to spend more time with it. And I'm excited for that, to really feel like what it's like to live with one of those and not just spend a day with it. Because I think that's one of the most intriguing cars of the year from an enthusiast standpoint. And from a normal car standpoint, very rarely do we see a company try and make these kind of leaps. And so it's very interesting to see, who makes the leap, who crashes and burns, how it plays out. And so Mazda is one I'm really going to be watching closely over the next couple of years for sure. So anyway, I said I'd do quick answers to these questions to get caught up, and I'm not holding up that bargain here. So Copper also says MDX still sells well in the segment despite being essentially a nicer pilot. Yeah, and there are some key differences there, but yeah, it's that that whole recipe works, and that's why everyone does it, because it works. As long as there's enough differentiation, it always, seems to be fine with normal consumers. And let me see. So Evinder says, okay, so that was the emergency vehicle question. Somehow I missed a bunch of questions, and then that one ended up popping up. Harris says, what are your favorite TV shows and movies, Matt? Just doesn't have to be car related, just curious. Yeah, no, thanks for switching it up, Harris, with a different question here. As far as TV shows and movies, movies wise, some of my favorite franchises are the James Bond franchise, the Fast and Furious one, Back to the Future. That trilogy is one of my favorites of all time as well. Basically anything on this shelf, which is kind of blurred out, so maybe it's kind of hard for you guys to see. But yeah, those are probably my top ones. There's a bunch of other random movies that I enjoy as well. But I'd say those are probably my favorites. I'd say probably James Bond. If I had to pick one, that whole series is probably my favorites of all time. As far as TV shows go, there's a good amount of shows that I watch recently. So just one random thing. Just last night, I finally started watching the new season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't know if any of you watch that or into that, but just as a random little aside, that show, the writing is so good, and it's kind of an intense show from a dialogue standpoint. You really got to be paying attention, and it's very intense with all the characters and everything. But I it's so much enjoyment out of watching that show. It's so fun. And Alex Borstein, her character is just brilliant, and she is such a good actress, and it's so impressive. So anyway, I just watched that last night, so that's fresh in my mind. I also love, like Beth and I also watch Saturday Night Live pretty regularly, and that's something we really enjoy too. The weekend updates that they do are always hilarious, so that's always another favorite of mine. And other TV shows, there's a bunch of ones from the past that I really love that aren't around anymore. Like Seinfeld is one of my favorites. Timeless is a show that is kind of a niche show, but I really loved Timeless back when that was on the air. And there's a bunch of them just that I've watched over the years. But yeah, I'd probably have to sit down and write them all down, but those are the ones off the top of my head. So thanks for the fun question. I appreciate it, Harris. Rafi says, I love my FK8, but I think I do too much driving for the seats. I average 20,000 miles a year. Will I regret downgrading to an SI or an Integra manual? I'm just waiting for a moonroof on the Type S. Yeah, it's a bummer. I don't know why they didn't put a moonroof in the Type S, and I also don't know why they didn't put a third seatbelt in the back seat again. Like, I don't know, like, why did that copy over from the Type R? Like, there doesn't seem to be any good reason why they can't add another mounting point, considering they're still using the Integra body. I don't get that, but yeah, I mean, as far as the only thing I'll say about the FK8 is, do you have the adaptive dampers, which you don't get in the new SI. If you go for an Integra, I guess you get that. So from a comfort standpoint, if you want comfort, I wouldn't get the SI, because I think you're gonna, yes, you might have an upgrade in seat comfort, but you're gonna have a downgrade in ride comfort. I think the Type R in its soft setting rides smoother than the SI. So if you are going for more comfort, I would certainly say in your case, definitely get the Integra over the SI. And then you're gonna have, yeah, you got the adaptive dampers, you got that extra comfort, the extra seat comfort, and then you get the moonroof right on the Integra, A spec or whatever. So that, I think that'd probably be the play if you're trying to downgrade from the FK8. As far as will you regret it, it comes down to how much you use that power and how much you appreciate that. If that's something that you really are going to miss, you like having that level of power. I'd certainly test drive one if you can and see for yourself. It's definitely, obviously, you're down 100 horsepower basically, so it's a big drop. But if power is not that important to you, then yeah, I'd say it's totally fine. Otherwise, I don't know. I'd say maybe just try and go for, a Type S if you can live without the moonroof. Or maybe, I don't know how many companies still do aftermarket moonroofs, but it was a thing in the past. I don't know if it still is, but it might not be insane to put a moonroof in it yourself. Not yourself, but you have a company do it that does that kind of a thing. Might be a dumb suggestion. I don't know, but that's the only thing I could say maybe for your situation. Maybe they'll offer it up in the future. I'm hoping to go on the Integra Type S launch. I didn't get an invite yet, but I don't think they've sent out invites for that yet. But when that happens, if I do get to sit down with the Integra or with the Acura team, I'm going to ask them why. I'm just, because they might say they didn't see any justification for it, or it was a limitation for some reason, but I'm going to ask, and I hope to get a good answer as far as why. And maybe there'll be a hope of it coming for the next model year or something. I don't know. We'll have to see. So I know, like, whenever, like with the Elantra N, there's a moonroof on the dual clutch, but there's not a moonroof on the manual. And when I asked them, like, why not offer the moonroof, they're like, oh, we could. We just didn't think anyone wanted it with the manual. We thought that if you're buying a manual, you want the lowest center of gravity, so therefore you do not want a moonroof, which is a stupid overgeneralization in my opinion, because clearly there's some people who just like shifting. That doesn't mean they're trying to turn it into a race car, so. But I think they said, like, there's a potential they could add it in, but I don't think they ever did. Maybe the refresh will offer that. I'm not sure. But there was no limitation there. So it's one of those things, if you just send a strong enough message, like if you physically go to your dealer and say, hey, here's my bank account, I will buy one of these Type S's tomorrow if they put a moonroof in it. And you say that, and because then sometimes those salesmen will pass that up the stream there and let people know. And of course, myself and others will try and forward that message as well. But I think that's really the best way to hope that maybe there will be something at some point down the road. But yeah, it's something that's unfortunate for sure. Anyway, so we have oh, I see. Sorry, Wild Frames, you had another super chat I completely missed. Sorry to keep you waiting there. And we also have Luco has one I just saw as well. So let me answer this one first. But Wild Frames, thank you so much once again for the super chat. He said, you can make calculations that if 100% of the cars become electric from tomorrow, there will be less than 5% overall CO2 footprint of the planet. Politics plays more than actual sense here. Yeah, and I don't really want to get into the whole debate as far as EVs and environmental stuff, because that's a very divisive topic, and it's one of those things that I've tried to stay as neutral as I can. Like, clearly the EVs are coming, I'm covering them, and that's new cars. I cover new cars, and that's something I have to cover. But I still try and stay neutral, because I can't afford to alienate people who don't have the same opinion as me. And I also, it's one of those things, people come to this channel for car stuff, not politics or anything like that. There's other channels if you want to hear whatever information you want to hear, and there's, on both sides, you can find stuff to confirm your confirmation bias either way if you want. It's very tricky, and so I don't want to really wade into those waters too much there. But I appreciate the super chat. And if you have any other questions related to EVs, though, I'm happy to get into that, as long as it's something that can be relatively neutral, just so we're not ruffling feathers here too much. Luco, thank you so much for the first super chat. He says, have you ever had a speeding ticket? I have. So I'll do a fun little short story. I've only had one speeding ticket. And it was whenever I had my Legacy GT Spec B. It was whenever I was driving back to college one fall. I think it was in the fall. Yeah. So I was in Legacy GT Spec B. I went to Virginia Tech for college. I live in Pittsburgh. I was going down south there, and I was in West Virginia, passing through, and the speed limits are a little higher there at this point in time. On this segment, it was 65, and I got pulled over doing 81 and a 65, and it was one of those ones where there's a lot of windy highways in West Virginia. So I was going around a corner essentially, and he was like right there waiting. There was no reaction time. It was just like, yep, he got me. And they really engineered that area to be a perfect speeding trap. And so basically, he gave me the ticket, and it was so the way they do the tickets also suggests they set it up to be a speed trap, because the ticket, at least in this part of West Virginia, was like there's a straight like $165 court fee. And then for every 5 mile per hour over that you went, it was like an extra like $2. So the difference, there's probably some points and stuff involved if I went faster, but from a money standpoint, the difference between me doing 81 and 150 was probably like a $15 difference. So it was like really dumb. It's like no matter what, even if you fought it or whatever, you knocked it down, no matter what, you'd still be paying a huge ticket. And so he did say, like, he said whenever he came up to the window, he was like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I was like, I know I was going a little fast. I apologize. Obviously you're always respectful. You're always nice about it and honest, as long as you're not incriminating yourself too badly. But I was like, I know I was going fast. And he said, yeah, well, I appreciate you, being upfront with me. He's like, I'll knock it down to 5 over. And I didn't know that the way West Virginia worked, that, the difference between him saying, oh, I'm writing him up for 70 and a 65 versus 81 and a 65. I was like, oh, phew. Like, I don't know where the points threshold was for West Virginia, but basically he saved me like $5 by doing it. I thought he was like doing me this huge favor, but it was like a $5 savings. But anyway, it's also, I think you're less likely to fight if they're like, oh, it's only 5 over. I've gotten this as low as it can possibly be anyway, and so since I was also out of state, I didn't, I just sent in the money and that was it. But it definitely sucked. And especially, back in 2000, when would that been? Probably 2009, I think, when I got that ticket. Back then, $165 was a little more than it is these days. So definitely stung, especially as a college student. But yeah, you live and you learn. So, and Rafi, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. I'll go to the dealer and bug them. I want a moonroof in my possible future Type S. I totally understand that. And it's something that should have had. I don't know why they never did that. But all right, let me try and go back to the member questions here and find where I left off. There's a bunch of them here, so I don't want to miss out. So Carlos says, the only annoyance I have with the 86, and it's a small nitpick, is since it's very low, I get blinded by headlights of other cars. Planning on the windshield tinting to fix that, though. It's awesome that your state allows windshield tinting. That's great. That is one thing, and that's one thing I really like about this styling trend, even though I hated it when it first started with the Jeep Cherokee, where it had the split headlight thing. That's the big perk of the split headlight, and I think that's why companies are transitioning, because they all are tired of getting blinded by these vehicles. And so you have your fancy, cool headlights right at the top there. It's very bold and aggressive and stylish. And then the real lights are lower, so therefore you blind less people. Now, in a GR86, you're going to be blinded by basically everything, no matter what. That's a valid nitpick for sure. But hopefully, it's one of those things that's worth living with for you. I know for me in the BRZ, I guess it was less of a problem 10 years ago because there was less trucks and SUVs on the road 10 years ago. But, it was annoying, but it's one of those things that I never really had it irk me too much. But I can certainly see that getting old after a while. And Carlos says, his car is always available for review if I want it. I appreciate that. Thank you for the offer, Carlos. And yeah, maybe if there's ever a point where you're not too far, maybe we can meet up and I'll do a quick drive or something just to show off the exhaust if Toyota doesn't come through with a press vehicle at some point. I really appreciate the offer, though. And so Dom says they're 18-wheelers. They're electric. Emergency vehicles should be fine. Okay, so yeah, it's true about the 18-wheelers. I think the 18-wheelers, though, like the Tesla Semi and stuff, it's a lot of batteries. It's a lot of drain infrastructure-wise, and as far as materials go and stuff. So that's why it's like, for some of them, if they've the fast charging, potentially it could, make sense. but hydrogen could potentially, be something as well. And that's why a lot of these companies are doing both and developing both to see, which would make the most sense. And let me see here. Damien, okay, we're talking about the seats again on the Type S here. And Truck and Car Guy says there may be EV semis, but they're constantly braking or only doing short trips. Yeah, I think that's the thing is for right now, it's mostly short haul stuff. I think even like Pepsi with the Tesla semis, they're only doing the short hauling stuff with those EVs for now. But it's one of those things that will continue to improve. Like if you watched the weekly update this past week, Cattle, it just came out with a new battery, and they're one of the huge suppliers for EVs all over the world. And it's a battery that's double the density, so therefore could have potentially close to double the range. And so if that's something that's already in existence, they've already done that. It's just a matter of getting the price down on that. You immediately have basically almost doubled the range in a bunch of other vehicles that, have those batteries. Now we're talking about double the range. Does that make it more reasonable for trucks and things like that? Potentially, it's just one of those things, that it's going to come down to uses case and where the chargers are at, how plentiful they are, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he says that we're still several years to maybe a decade from a realistic over-the-road 18-wheeler not powered by diesel. Yeah, and I think that's why, even the EPA and stuff, they're not really cracking down on the semis, too aggressively just yet. And that's why 2032 is the goal, which, gives us 9 years for that basic car stuff. And even then, it's only a percentage. You're still going to have a large chunk that are going to be, diesel even at that point, which is, again, way off into the future. So that's why I keep telling everyone this stuff's very gradual, not happening overnight or anything. And let me see here. So, and Truck and Car Guy says emergency vehicles may come sooner. Believe me, all the truck OEMs are likely working on it as we speak. Yeah, definitely. And also, I know one thing I think is going to come first is the electric school buses. There's a really big push for that, especially from an emission standpoint, just because of the diesel emissions not being great for little kids. And so there's a health push there, as well as more so than obviously there's emissions and that health related thing regardless, but especially for little kids, having them around these enormous, diesel pipes, picking them up whenever, in these buses and stuff. I think that's going to be the first thing you see. And they'll all basically, I just read an article this week about how all the school bus companies are rapidly working on the electric thing. There's a ton of money coming in with all the new infrastructure bills and stuff to support that transition. So I think what you will see, and that'll probably be a good test case, is how does it work for school buses, and then adapt that to the garbage trucks and all these other emergency vehicles and things like that as well. But I think school buses is going to be the pioneer for that one for sure. Jazz says, Matt, on your recent Honda Accord review, I thought you said there is not satellite radio on the vehicle. That seems really strange. Did I hear that correctly? Yeah, the Accord has no serious satellite radio, regardless of what trim you get. And it's strange because it's not like it's locked out. Even the base versions don't have it. But yet, Honda offers it in all their other vehicles. So it's one of those things. I don't know why. I don't know what happened there. It's not the new screen because, like I said, even the older, smaller screen doesn't have it. I don't know. I have no clue why, and it's really strange. But I know it's for a lot of people, they're like, that's a deal killer. Everyone loves satellite radio for the most part. And so not having that or the option to have it is just annoying. I mean, yes, you can use the app and then do CarPlay and run it that way, I guess, as long as, your internet connection is decent, but that's still just an annoying workaround. And I'm not sure why they nixed that. It seems strange, but that is in fact the case. And Dom says about electric planes. Not really, just because for a while it's been so hard just from, again, a range standpoint. And also the recharge times of refilling a battery that fast when you get these fast turnaround times of 30 minutes or 45 minutes on some of these planes sometimes. So I think it's a little way off for that, but I know that's one thing that in the weekly update I mentioned how that new battery that Cattle just came out with, they're saying with that double density, they now could potentially make an electric plane feasible. Again, recharge times are going to be the big deciding factor there, but it's one of those things that potentially could now work a little bit better if you have these much more dense batteries. So I think it's something, again, they're working on it because, again, planes are a huge emission problem as well. And so that's another thing they need to tackle eventually. It's just, the restrictions and also the safety. If you have a Mach-E get stranded on the side of the road, it's not as big of a deal as having a plane falling out of the sky. So it's also that kind of a thing. There's a much higher safety threshold. And also as far as batteries, there are battery fires. Obviously there's engine fires and jet engines as well. So this isn't, again, an exclusive thing for electric planes, but you got to make sure, okay, are these batteries safe? Yes, they might be more power dense, but let's use them for 10 years. And then if they are safe, then maybe we'll put them 30,000 feet up in the sky with, 150 people strapped in or whatever, So I think there's some of that. There's just a lot more hurdles there to make that a reality. And that's why you're not seeing, as rapid of a transition as far as those higher risk levels of transport compared to, personal vehicles. And Goth Rock Girl says, Matt, also car driver and Ford Authority in December 2022 took photos of a Lincoln Zephyr on American streets. Looks like it was being tested out here for the US. My dealer told me, I didn't know. I think I may remember seeing that. The tricky thing, though, about spy shots is that a lot of times they do test vehicles here just because they're engineered here a lot of times still. I mean, some of them do have an independent, Chinese engineering arm, but for a lot of that stuff, like I know, for example, a lot of people were thrown off whenever Jeep kept testing the Grand Commander, and there was like Jeep executives just taking their kids to daycare in Grand Commanders, and everyone's like, whoa, what's this Grand Commander thing? It's not camouflage. Like, is this something you're thinking about for the States? And it was like, no, we never got the Grand Commander. It was never in the plan for the States. It was just that they were working on them. They had them here, obviously, under their exemptions or whatever. And so they were able to, just drive Grand Commanders. And I actually, whenever I went to the Woodward Dream Cruise back in 2019, I was just sitting in a red light and I was like, oh, wait, there's a Grand Commander. It's like this weird Jeep that looks familiar but isn't exactly right. And, and that's a completely unique thing. I was like, oh, this would make a lot of sense. And, it just ended up not coming here. I guess they couldn't justify it between the Grand Cherokee L and the, Wagoneer. But, so there is sometimes you see some of those vehicles. Cadillac does the same thing. There's some, and even Buick, there's some of those Chinese models that end up on Detroit streets. And then people are like, wait, is this actually coming? And then it's actually not. Like, actually, someone just sent me a few months back, there was a new Cadillac CT6 driving through Pittsburgh with camo on it. But we don't get the CT6 anymore. But China still does because they buy them. And so, it's one of those things, maybe it's coming back, but it's like, no, it's probably not coming back. It's just, they got to do testing on it. And, most of those engineers working on it are here. And so that's why they're, driving it around the States. So there's some of that too. So unfortunately, that's not always a good indicator. Let me see. So Sean says, Matt, what are some of the best and worst design trends you've seen since reviewing cars? I'd say worst is the lack of buttons, and I know that's an easy thing to pick on. I mean, there's some companies that do the screen thing better than others, but I think at the end of the day, you can't beat the muscle memory of a knob and the feeling of a knob. And you also, especially in luxury vehicles, you lose out on an edge. If everything is a screen, then me tapping the screen in my Mach-E feels the same as me tapping the screen in a $200,000 Mercedes electric vehicle. And, that was one of the things. It used to be the switches and the knobs felt nicer. And this is something Mazda, they're trying to go more luxurious. They obsess. They do like insane amounts of studies and the science behind you pressing a button and how that feels, because that's a differentiator. And Mazda really values that even more than most companies do. It's insane how obsessive they are about those little things at Mazda. But anyway, in a Mercedes, you have less opportunity for that because you still have window switches and one or two other things. But other than that, you have less to upgrade in the vehicle compared to a mainstream model. So I think that's, not smart, especially for the luxury brands, because you're stuck. But it's like you also have to win the screen war. And it's this, almost like a horsepower war, except you're talking about screen size instead. It's like you got to have 1 inch more than everybody else. And so, it's that kind of a thing. And, so I don't know. I think that's probably the worst thing. I mean, I love a lot of the big screens, but I think like in the Mustang, for example, it ruined it. To me, I don't like the big screens in that. I think they had to compromise on the, historical cues for the interior. And, it's just one of those things of having extra screen real estate for the sake of having it. Like, yes, now you have graphics by the same company that does video games. Cool. But guess what? I'm driving my real car in real life. I don't need it to feel like a video game. If I want to feel like a video game, I'll go sit in my house and play my video game. I want it to feel like the real thing. And so, that's just one thing I'm just for me, not doing it for the new Mustang. But as far as the best trends, I'm really loving the new lighting trends, and that's something that isn't a new thing. In the 80s, there was, the whole light bar in the front, and that being super cool and futuristic. And now it's coming back. But I think that, I love how Volvo, like in the new EX90, has those like Iron Man looking lights that, are this little sliver, and then they open up and the new lights, like the other actual projectors, emerge from the middle. It's like super cool. And I'm hoping that everyone else is like, that's awesome. Let's follow that trend. And everyone has these like, headlights that look like Iron Man's helmet and just do all kinds of crazy things. And I think that would be really cool. Just make the whole car a transformer, essentially, and, follow that train of thought all the way down the line there. I think that'd be really cool. And so, I think that's one of my favorite trends is just the lighting trends and those lighting signatures being so cool. And the customization too of those types of things. Like Audi lets you customize what little LED pattern you want there in the headlight and stuff. I think that's great. It gives you that individuality a little bit. It's just fun, so I think those are my favorites. And Jay says, Matt, have you reviewed the Volvo S40 5-cylinder turbo? I have not. I've never driven a 5-cylinder Volvo, I don't think. But it'd be a fun one to do for sure. Challenger Chris says, if all the gas stations would pitch in for a bank of chargers, maybe 4 or 5 or more per station with a number of stations, I could see it working. And that's kind of what a lot of them are trying to do. Shell has bought a couple of the EV charging companies, and they're going to be rolling them out, I think as well, alongside the gas stations. I think for a lot of these gas stations, that's what they're eyeing up, because really, if I were owning a gas station, an electric vehicle is like my dream scenario, because gas station guy comes in, fills up in 5 minutes, maybe buys a bag of chips, and they're out. They use my bathroom for free or whatever. And, maybe sometimes you even lose money because you make a few bucks on the gas or whatever, but then they're using your utilities and stuff. Versus an electric vehicle owner, guess what? We got to sit around for 20 or 30 minutes. Guess what? Whenever you're having more time on your hands, you might say, oh, you know what? Maybe I will buy a drink. Maybe I will buy some snacks. Maybe I'll buy more snacks. And, maybe I'll, or have a restaurant attached to it or whatever. And spend more money on food than a bag of chips or whatever. And so I think, it's going to make a ton of sense. And another thing, and I'm probably going to do a separate video on this as like a rant someday, but I don't know why more fast food companies aren't doing charging stations. Because if I'm on a road trip, and there's a McDonald's and a Wendy's, and the McDonald's has a charger and the Wendy's doesn't, guess what? If I'm in the Mach-E, I'm stopping at McDonald's every single time. I don't care how much I hate their food. If I can stop there and get a charge and have something that I can tolerate food-wise, as long as it's not absolutely horrible, that's just every time going to win. Obviously, right now, it's only 6% of the motoring public is driving electric vehicles. But as that number grows, it's easy money for these companies. Yes, you spend, I think it's what, 60 grand to put in a fast charger for one stall, I think, if I remember correctly. I think that's roughly the ballpark. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, you spend 60 grand up front. But you use that charger for out and however many years. And if that increases your business, you can make back 60 grand pretty quick, if that appeal is there. And also, even if you just advertise you have a charger, even if not everyone who even shows up there has the ability to charge, if it's, full or whatever, you're still increasing your traffic either way. And so, I think that gas stations are going to be jumping on it. You'll see fast food stations eventually jumping on it. I know Volvo and Starbucks have already partnered up in the Northeast, I think in Oregon and Washington State and a few others, where they are testing this along Starbucks along the highway. They're putting fast chargers, Volvo branding, but they're available to anyone in these Starbucks parking lots. And I'm like, yes, 100%. Like, that makes sense. I'm going to stop for a coffee. If I'm like, hey, I need to stop at a charger, would I rather sit at a Walmart for half an hour, or would I rather sit at a Starbucks for half an hour? No, unless you need to buy groceries or something, no contest. I'm going to go get myself a coffee. Would I buy a coffee normally otherwise? Probably not. But hey, I'm there. I got 20 minutes to kill. Might as well go in and get a coffee. It's just, to me, it makes so much sense. And so I think that will certainly help the infrastructure to spread it out more too and make it a lot better. Anyway, a little rant there, but and so getting back to the Lincoln Zephyr, Goth Rocker says the Zephyr has a unique dash design that's in the new Nautilus, and the dealer told me the Nautilus is being shipped over from China for the U.S. market, so the Zephyr can come over on the same ship. Okay, I can see that. That makes sense. Yeah, if they can justify, the Nautilus kind of subsidizing the Zephyr from a shipping standpoint and stuff, and production, that could make sense. Yeah, I guess we'll see how American buyers react to a Chinese-built Nautilus, because I mentioned that in the weekly update whenever I talk about that vehicle as well, that it will be built in China, and that'll certainly alienate some people as well. But if it doesn't hurt it too much, then I think that can also be a green light for the Zephyr. And Jay says that Mazda tried with the Unos for a luxury brand, but it flopped after 7 years. Interesting. I guess maybe I don't know my Mazda history very well. I didn't know that brand was like a luxury thing. Huh. I have some research to do now. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, Jay. That's really cool. Maybe they'll bring it back then. Maybe even not as like a full-blown thing, but maybe it could be like how Buick's doing the what do they call that top trim of the Buicks now? The Avenir. It could be like the Avenir. Maybe they call like a CX90 Unos or something like that. Have that be like the luxury thing, potentially something like that. I don't know. That's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up, Jay. Hugo says it wouldn't surprise me if Mazda comes out with a V8. Yeah, I agree. It's I don't know how they're doing it, but it's awesome. And Jazz says Mazda's already kind of upscale in its class, so having a luxury brand would kind of undermine its niche. I guess that's a good point too. Is if you do a Mazda luxury thing, then Mazda itself has to then downgrade. So yeah, I think they're just committing to the Mazda thing, and that's it. That's a good point, Jazz. He says, however, I'd like to see Subaru have an upscale brand, even though I realize for the reasons Matt pointed out would probably not be an easy task. Yeah, and I think with Subaru too, the unique thing with them is they're not trying to go up market, and Subaru actually prides themselves on how low their transaction price is, and it's one of the lowest in the industry. And so I think they know they have more salt of the earth kind of people that buy cheap stuff, that don't need all the bells and whistles, and are okay with that. And so I think, that's, kind of their niche. So I think as far as any mainstream brands go that don't have a luxury brand already, I think Subaru is going to be one of the last ones to ever do a luxury brand. I don't think it's ever going to happen for that reason. Yeah. So, and I guess so you're mentioning about how people who like Subarus might, want something nicer. And there's certainly some of that. I think they tried that with the touring trims. And I think those certainly raise the transaction prices a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, they're still selling way more. Like there is no touring trim or the Crosstrek, but the Crosstrek is the number one selling Subaru now. So I don't know how much the touring trim. I think the touring trim really makes sense for the Outback to kind of do a premium-ish thing to compete against the Volvos and the Audi Allroads and stuff like that. And then with the Ascent, everyone else has a super luxurious trim, so I guess Subaru felt they had to do that as well. But I think beyond that, there's some limitations there. And Jazz says, sorry you didn't get to act in the James Bond movie. You and Beth would have been great in those movies. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, for those of you that don't know what he's referencing, I've been an extra in a bunch of movies in the past and a few TV shows as well. And so, yeah, if there was ever a James Bond movie filming remotely close to me, I would definitely go out of my way to try and be an extra in that. But the Batman movies are also one that I really love, and that's how I got into doing the behind the scenes filming for that way back when. So yeah, that would be a fun one though, man. It'd be a dream to even be near a James Bond set someday. That'd be so cool. I'm really bummed I didn't have time when I was in the UK a few years back. It was just too far away to go to Pinewood Studios, but I would have loved to go there and take a tour. Elijah says, I was a background extra on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 2, episode 4 and 5 when they go to the Catskills as a bellhopper. That is awesome. I love those episodes of them in the Catskills. That is so fun, Elijah. Yeah, that's really, really cool. I'll have to, if I ever go back, I don't know if I'm ever going to rewatch it though, because I just don't have time to rewatch shows as much as I'd love to, but that is super cool and so fun. That's as far as like being an extra, since I'm kind of a history nerd in some ways, I would love to be in a movie that was set in a time period like that. Just be so fun, to pretend like you're in the 50s and the 60s for a day. The furthest back that I went, what movie? So when I was in The Perks of Being a Wallflower, that was set in like 1989 for the dance scene that I was in. And that was fun with the style and, having to wear these itchy sweaters and all this stuff. That was a fun one to just pretend like you're in a different time period for that. But I don't think any of the movies or TV shows I've been in have gone further back than that. I think that was it. Yeah. There's been some stuff that's filmed here that's been set in the 70s and 60s and even the 40s. I just haven't had the time to go down and be an extra because I'm just so busy with everything else. But that's so awesome. I'm so jealous of you, Elijah. I gotta say, I'm very jealous of that. That has gotta been so fun. And I'd be curious if you have any other comments or you want to send me a message sometime. We can talk about our experiences as an extra. If you've been in an extra in any other stuff, I'd love to hear about it because it's always fun kind of trading stories about that. And let me see here. Other questions. So Harris says, okay, we're talking about the sunroof thing still. Gotcha. I'm way behind the comments here. And Justin says, smart man about staying out of the politics. Yeah, it's just, one of those things. I've got lots of opinions, but I just don't want to share them. Jason's, yeah, reminiscing about the Spec B, such a fun car. Rafi says, my parents' CRV has a moonroof and has a better sound system than my FK8. I was pretty bothered by that. Yeah, that's Honda's stereos were not great for a good long while there. I'm glad they finally improved that stuff with the new Bose systems, but for a while they were not the best. Let me see here. Other questions. Steven says, hey Matt, what brand of dash cam would you recommend for around $100? I haven't kept up with pricing for dash cams recently as far as what is a good value. I used to review them a few years back, as you might well know, but I don't really pay attention to them too much anymore. The one that I still run in my Bullet, I don't know if it's probably over $100, but the one I still run in the Bullet is the Vantrue. See, I don't even remember the name of it now. It's terrible. But it's the 4K Vantrue. I like having the 4K thing because that way, if you do need to zoom in on a license plate from further out, it's just the better video quality you can afford, the better off you are. So I would just say try and go as high resolution as you can. Try and get something that has a good low light resolution. But if you search on the channel for Vantrue, I did a review on the one that I have in the Bullet, and there's a link to it in the description there if you want to check out that product in particular. The one affordable, and Vantrue also does have a nice little small one that's nice and cheap that I've used, but I've heard really good things about other brands too, like Blackview. They're some of the best, but they're also pretty pricey. So for around $100, I don't know. I price the Vantrue ones. They're not the best. Like the Vantrue that I have and the ones I've used in the past, they do sometimes freeze up. And they're not the best out there, but they get the job done most of the time. So that's probably what I'd recommend. Is checking some of their stuff out, but I'm not sponsored by them or anything, by the way. It's just, they sent me some dash cams for free a while back to test out, and I just did reviews on them. But I wish I had a better answer for you. And maybe someone else, if anyone else has any dash cam experience, want to chime in, help Steven out there, that'd be great too, if any of you have any experience with that. But Trucking Car Guy says he's had a few run-ins with the law, mostly due to work. I'm sure with all the driving, there's got to be a lot. I see we have, I think a new super chat popped up. Thank you so much, Dom, for the super chat. He says, how are backup cams almost standard but not dash cams? Do you have any insight? I think, for some reason, there was just this huge safety issue where all of a sudden we needed to have backup cameras. I'm not sure how that even got justified, because having a backup camera is nice, but I don't really think it's like a must-have like safety feature that had to be federally mandated, but it is. Dash cams, I think the problem with dash cams from a standard standpoint is there are different laws in different states for dash cams. You have to be careful. And I think for manufacturers, it just gets a little tricky with customizing it. And I guess they could kind of do a legal disclaimer to like set it up for your laws in your states. But like some states, you need to have someone's permission in order to record them or to record their audio. So sometimes, it's one of those things where some dash cams will allow you to not record audio, but just the video, just in case someone doesn't consent. And also, even like with video, there's a lot of times where, they want the dash cams to be visible because in some states, you need to know that you are being recorded or at least be alerted to the fact that you're being recorded. And so with a built-in dash cam, it's really seamless. And someone who, for example, a service tech hops in your car, if they don't know they're being recorded, they may do and say different things than if they were being recorded, so there's some of that. So if you have a dash cam hanging down and, every time it turns on, it makes a noise that alerts you, hey, there's a dash cam in the vehicle. You see it up there very plainly. And from a legal standpoint, it's a little more clean cut there. So I think, there's some of that, I think, that might be playing into dash cams not being more widespread, but you are starting to see dash cams more and more as an option in some vehicles. And so I think it's something that will continue to be more and more popular. And I think it will, be something that we see more and more of in the future. It's just not quite there yet. And I think it's also going to come down to how these laws evolve over time. But it's a good question, though. And thank you so much again for the super chat, Dom. I appreciate it. To get back here to the other member questions. So Harris says, don't worry, guys. I'm becoming a lawyer and I'll fight your tickets. Texas only, though. Well, congrats on becoming a lawyer or working towards that, Harris. That's awesome. And fight the good fight. That's great. And there was also, if you are someone who wants to fight your tickets in other states, random plug. I don't get paid by them or anything anymore. I just did a sponsored thing a couple of years back with Off the Record is the name of the company. And if you actually watch my FK8 Type R review, that was one of the ones where I did a plug for that. If you want to find more info on them and hear that spiel and the link and all that, they do fight your tickets, and you pay a fee, but it saves you money versus, getting the points and, paying the ticket, and they will fight your ticket for you. And I don't think it's all states, but that is one. If you are someone who needs help with tickets, Off the Record is the way to go. And I can't even remember a few years ago if my link has a discount. I think there's a discount associated. So you might want to check out I think it's the 2021 Type R review I did, or maybe it's 2020 Type R review, and check that out for the link to that. Shameless plug, but I don't even remember if there's a discount code. So regardless, you just go to their site if you need any help with that, but not getting paid for that, but there you go. And Joel says, Matt, what can be done about non-usage of trafficators in the U.S.? In my opinion, it's the number one cause of crashes here. It's been hard to drive here since I left Ghana to the U.S. Subscribed while in Ghana. Much love. Thank you for subscribing and for being a member. I really appreciate it. So if you're talking about indicators like red lights and stuff, I'm not sure what you mean by trafficators. Maybe I'll see if there's any follow-up question about that. But as far as I think in the US, I can't remember the number one cause of crashes. I think it's just distracted driving these days. But yeah, I know the US is a lot better with everyone stopping at red lights compared to some other countries, where I know I had a buddy that was in India for a little bit. And he was like, yeah, it's just like a free for all, and it's wild. And I've heard that about some other countries as well. So I think at least there's a little more order as far as red lights and stuff here, potentially, as long as people aren't too distracted by their phones. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out if you have any other follow-up questions, if I didn't understand you correctly there. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think I think, number one cause of crashes, I think, is just distracted driving these days, which just goes to show the way things are. And Challenger Chris likes the split headlight design on the Kona there. Damien says EV school buses makes a lot of sense. In my opinion, the commercial vehicles should be the priority for EV transportation. Yeah, I think it's a numbers game, though, as far as what puts out the most pollution on a volume scale. And obviously the commercial stuff pollutes more, but there's less of them out there. I don't know. I don't remember the numbers as far as how that was arrived at, but I think it seems like it's a pretty lopsided amount of the emissions comes from the privately owned vehicles for the most part, depending on the part of the country you're in and stuff. But Damien says ICE cars should not be banned. People should have the right to choose what they want to drive. And that's kind of getting into the politics thing, so I won't. But I will say there is no ban in the U.S. So if you live in the U.S., you're good. 2032, they're saying 2/3 of stuff should be EVs, but even that, I believe, allows for a plug-in hybrid exemption. So I think plug-in hybrids will continue to be an option for a long time. Toyota's talking about how they're working on plug-in hybrids that have over 100 miles of range, so they will be primarily EVs, but you'll still have that gas engine to give you the freedom to drive wherever you want to drive if gas is still your thing. Yeah, like Greg says, don't worry about that for another 3 decades. And that's the thing I keep coming back to, regardless about how you feel about this whole situation. The average car on the road is 12 years old. 12 years. So even if you talk about a Bolt is affordable now for someone who's a new car buyer in 2023. For that car to become an affordable used vehicle for the average person, or just to be the average age of the car on the road, you could go 12 years from now. 12 years from now, we're talking 2035. By 2035, they will just become slightly mainstream, affordable used vehicles for the average person. And then, with battery, some of them have good lives, like, Tesla, their battery packs seem to hold up pretty well and only lose like 15 or 20% of their range over 10 years or so. But, some of that could play in to make those depreciate a little faster. But basically, there's a long time before anything you're seeing in 2023 becomes mainstream. Give it 12 more years. Anything that's mainstream right now for the people that are buying brand new cars, which is, a small subset of people that are able to afford that, for it to become the thing for the masses, 2035 at the earliest. And that's still way far off. So like Greg said, probably 3 decades at least before it's really, truly mainstream. And this is why doesn't need to be any need for panic, in the immediate future. So let me see here. Hugo says, I wouldn't mind driving to PA from Virginia to do a meet and greet. Been watching your video since you had your BRZ. Maybe you can review my 2017 Ford Escape. LOL, I teared up when you got rid of your BRZ. Yeah, it was an emotional thing, and I know that was an emotional ride for a lot of people, and it sucks that I had to get rid of it way back with them. But thank you so much for watching all these years and for being willing to do a drive for a meet and greet. I do want to try and do a meet and greet this year. I know there's some other YouTubers that were trying to talk about, bringing together some of us to do meet and greets in the past, and that kind of fell off a little bit with COVID and stuff in the past. But now that we can do that kind of stuff safely and easily again, I think it's one of those things that I definitely want to get back into it. It's a little easier sometimes whenever I'm doing it with a sponsor. Like in the past, I did like the meet and greet. The last big one I did was with Shell. We were on our way to the Indy 500 back in 2019. It was me, Chris Fix, Humble Mechanic, Engineering Explained, Eric the Car Guy, all of us, doing our thing. And that was a ton of fun. And we just met up at a Shell station, and it was easy. We were able to, get the permission from them, and it was all, kosher and good. And so, I would love to do another meet and greet. I think one thing I am planning on going to more Cars and Coffees, or at least a couple this year. So anyone who would like to, you can maybe come up to a Cars and Coffee. And if it's something, if you really do want to, do a meet and greet, or you want to say hi in person and meet me someday, definitely send me a message. I don't like publicizing where I'm going to be ahead of time just for safety reasons a lot, but if it's something that's, someone would love to come up and say hi, I can let you know when I'm headed to a Cars and Coffee next, if you want to, come up for that. And, and we can hang out, because I love meeting everyone. It's always so much fun every time I've done one of those, and it's something I'd love to do more of in the future for sure. And let me see here. So yeah, people talking about the comments are so far behind. I apologize. I'm now like getting caught up on everyone talking about the texture of interiors and that being a luxury thing. And let me see here. So Jazz is asking if I'm saying that these fast food companies should provide charging for free. I definitely don't think that. I think they could definitely charge for it. It's just that, having it on location would help boost the sales for them. And yeah, Harris explained that as well. So yeah. Let me see here. Harris says Matt needs to be the new CEO for these charging companies. Hey, I'm open to offers. Anyone wants to, send me an email and give me a job offer, I'd happily consider. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's always easy to be an armchair quarterback. I'm sure there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are, prohibiting some of this stuff for sure. So anyway, hold on one second. I got a text here. Gotta check. Okay, so she said that there was another super chat. Okay, I see another super chat came in. Thank you so much, Julie. Said traffic haters are called turn signals in the US. Gotcha. Sorry, as a cultural thing I didn't pick up on. So turn signals. Yeah, and it depends on the brand. Certain brands are not the best with that. The running joke, of course, here, at least in the States, is BMW. They're notorious BMW drivers not using turn signals, and some of the others, especially luxury brands, just something they don't like doing. But yeah, turn signals are definitely helpful and nice, and it's a shame that more people don't use them. But it's something I see pretty frequently too. People just not using them, and it's not hard to do. But yeah, so it's a shame that it's the number one cause of accidents, though, or the number one cause you've seen. I think it's, for me, I've just seen so many people distracted. I've seen so many speed related accidents of people just driving crazy and that, bites them. And all right, let me see here. I don't want to miss out on any other member questions. I see we are getting close to time, but we got 3 minutes left here, so I'm going to try and catch up as fast as I can here. Mike says, do you think it would have been better for Chevy to brand the Corvette SUVs as Cadillacs, or Corvette name is just stronger? I think for those Corvette SUVs, they're going for the performance thing. And Cadillac obviously has the performance arm with Blackwing and stuff, but I think they just wanted to do something that was more of a direct competitor to Porsche. And I think Cadillac still doesn't really feel like it's really that kind of a name. So I think, just branching off of the Corvette thing kind of makes the most sense. And Jay says Boeing 787 Dreamliner had issues with lithium-ion batteries where they were catching fire. Airplanes will likely run on renewable energy in the future. Yeah, and that's, I think, it's definitely the safer bet, and it makes the most sense. And Truck and Car Guy says, I can see planes running on hydrogen as long as it doesn't have problems at altitude. Yeah, which definitely is a valid point. And like Challenger Chris said, hopefully they don't become the Zeppelin. You don't want that happening. Yeah, definitely very true. And Elijah said, you can watch one of my buddy's short films on YouTube called Armed Robbery with Accessory to Friendship. cool. I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the insight there. I'll have to see that. And yeah, definitely send me a message if you have any other acting experiences, Elijah. Like I said, it's fun to talk about that. Let me see here. So people talking about how they don't like flying. I do a lot of flying. That's one thing. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with flying. There was one time, random little side tangent, and then I'll try to do last couple questions, and then we gotta sign off here. But that was one thing. So recently, somebody was saying how you don't like flying. I was flying into the Atlanta airport maybe it was 2 months ago, for an event, and coming in for the landing. You can see the runway and stuff like that. The last minute, they like yank up and like we start shooting straight up into the sky again. I'm like, whoa, like that was definitely not normal. What's going on here? And we did a loop, and thankfully the pilot, came on and explained that I guess there was a plane that had just come in before ours that was leaving too much of a wake, and it was just wouldn't have made for a stable and safe approach. So we had to bail at the last minute and do a loop and come back around. But that was the first time in a while where I've had something a little out of the ordinary happen on a plane. Thankfully, all the turbulence and stuff hasn't been too bad, and everything's been pretty smooth. And like I said, I do a lot of flying, so I'm thankful that it is as safe as it is. And let me see here. So Mike says the backup cameras were mandated after a parent ran over their child in the driveway. Interesting. Well, that's pretty crazy. I guess, that makes sense, but you would think that like they would have also mandated like radar sensors or automatic emergency braking for the rear or something like that. But I guess the backup cameras give enough information for people, and that was enough. And they were seeing an increase in kids getting run over. Okay, well, thanks. I appreciate the insight, guys, on that, because I don't remember that being a thing. So I appreciate the historical insight there. Dom said Polestar removed the back window on their new car. How is that acceptable? That's still being recorded. So I think with camera review mirrors, it's just a live feed and there's no recording actually happening. So I think if there's no recording happening, then it's a different thing legally, because then it's just a monitor, I guess. And so I think there's less there. I think it's the recording thing, because then the recording can therefore be used against people, and that's kind of where it gets tricky. All right, so let me see here. I think we're pretty well caught up. Trucking Car Guy says, I'm probably contributing to the older age of vehicles on the road. I have a 20-year-old vehicle and a 16-year-old car. Yeah, but clearly you're not alone. Like I said, the majority of people are driving a 12-year-old vehicle right now. So that's the average. And so anyway, but yeah, we've hit the two hours here. So again, time flies. So great always hanging out with you guys and chatting. So thanks so much for joining. Hope you have a good rest of your Sunday here, and have a great week this week. Got a good week here coming up in reviews. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. And thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.